Old woman. Hello. My name is Dinara. I'm from social services. The door of the apartment opened slightly, and in the resulting narrow opening appeared the displeased wrinkled face of Clara Iosifovna. Where is Oksana? Oksana quit. Now I'll be in her place, Dinara answered, embarrassed. Having measured the girl with a stern, captious look, the grandmother removed the door chain and let the guest into the apartment. The fish are dead, the fish are dead, the old woman mumbled under her breath, shuffling her slippers along the corridor. What? Dinara didn't understand. But the grandmother ignored her question and sat down on a chair in front of the TV. Dinara worked in the social service for only a few months, but she already managed to get used to the harsh temper and capricious nature of some old people. Having spread the brought products on the shelves of the refrigerator, the girl began to clean up. Seeing the condition of the apartment, Dinara mentally wished Oksana to be looked after in her old age like she was. The rooms were in a terribly neglected state, as if they had never been cleaned at all. As a result, the girl had to spend almost 4 hours cleaning up instead of the planned 2. All this time, Clara Iosifovna did not react in any way to Dinara and seemed not to notice her at all. When the girl returned home, she collapsed on the bed exhausted. She was so tired cleaning the elderly woman's house that now she wanted only one thing: to go to bed as soon as possible. After feeding aquarium fish before going to bed, Dinara fell asleep. The next morning, the girl was annoyed to find that the heater in the aquarium had broken and the fish had boiled. A week passed, and Thursday came again, the day the social service visited Clara Iosifovna. This time, the elderly woman did not exchange a single word with Dinara at all, but only clicked her tongue at the meeting. When Dinara started cleaning, she could not believe her eyes. The apartment again looked the same as on her first visit. Even sticky spots and clouds of dust were in the same places as last time. What is she doing here? He beats carpets all day long, or what? Dinara thought indignantly and started cleaning. A fiery T-shirt, ulcers, scabs, blisters, Clara Iosifovna muttered, looking at the TV. From her words, Dinara was uneasy. Trying not to pay attention, the girl promised herself that next time she would come here with headphones. Ulcers, blisters, the grandmother still continued to whisper when Dinara, leaving, slammed the door behind her. A few days later, all the news broadcast urgent information. A large trading company is recalling a batch of textiles from its stores. Dangerous elements were found in the fibers of the fabric, causing burns of the skin in close contact with the body for several minutes. Hearing this news, Dinara immediately remembered the muttering of Baba Clara. But how could she know about this news before anyone else? But then the girl calmed down and attributed everything to her imagination. The grandmother was simply muttering incoherent nonsense. This is an ordinary coincidence, and there is no connection here. The following Thursday, Dinara again came to her ward and again found the apartment in a terrible state. And I also sinned against Oksana, the girl thought guiltily. Rats, rats everywhere, the grandmother sitting in front of the TV muttered, and one is so fat. Dinara has a nosebleed. Hearing her name, the girl almost dropped the mop from her hands. Are you contacting me? But the grandmother still did not react to the social worker, continuing to mutter and watch TV as well. That evening, having returned home, Dinara fell asleep right on the sofa, never reaching the bed. Through a dream, the girl felt a cat caressing her. He sniffed her cheek, then her ear, and then ran down her leg. He jumped on his back, stomped and crawled under the covers, pleasantly tickling the girl's ankle. Belatedly remembering that she had no cat for a long time, Dinara abruptly opened her eyes. In the moonlight, the girl could see two shiny beads, rat eyes. A fat gray rat sat opposite Dinara's face and rubbed its muzzle with nasty leathery paws with sharp little claws. Realizing that it was noticed, the rat snarled and gurgled. The frightened Dinara screamed at the top of her lungs. This frightened the rat, and it rushed straight into the face of the girl, grabbing the tip of her nose with sharp long teeth. From surprise and pain, Dinara screamed even more and in a panic began to thrash the rat with her hands to get rid of it. As soon as the opponent was thrown into wall, the girl threw back the blanket to get up and found under it two more of the same furry animals. With wild cries, Dinara rushed out of the apartment. Turmoil reigned in the stairwell. The inhabitants of neighboring apartments, like the girl, were fleeing, and large gray and brown rats aggressively jumped up, preparing for an attack and squeaking angrily. As it turned out, at night in the basement where a flock of rats lived, a pipe with hot water burst. Fleeing from the flood, the animals moved to the first floor of a residential building, where they met with its residents. The following Thursday, Dinara went to Clara Iosifovna with great apprehension. In the light of recent events, the grandmother no longer seemed so harmless to her. When the girl was washing the floors in Clara Iosifovna's apartment, she deliberately lingered in the large room near the TV in order to better hear the muttering of an elderly woman. "Oksana is a fool. That's how she should be. There's nothing to jump into a bunk with anyone. Now she's lying dead in a ravine. Worms are eating her intestines." Dinara was thrown into a sweat from the words of the crazy old woman. "How can you say such terrible words?" The girl bent down to wet a rag, and suddenly noticed that the TV was unplugged. The plug was lying on the floor under a thick layer of dust. Despite this, the frames on the old tube screen continued to change. Dinara took a closer look. When the girl realized that she was showing a TV, she recoiled and knocked over a bucket of dirty water on the floor. Oksana was on the screen. Dinara was hardly able to recognize her former colleague. The face of the unfortunate woman was mutilated almost beyond recognition. Deep wounds and cuts were visible all over her body. Her clothes were torn to shreds. Oksana was lying in some kind of dirty pit and looked directly into the camera with cloudy pupils of her eyes. There was no doubt. Oksana was dead. Dinara in horror dropped everything and ran to the exit. She no longer wanted to stay in this apartment for a minute. At the same time, Dinara came to her boss and wrote a vacation application with a subsequent translation. To hell with all these crazy old people with their insanity. She's had enough. Taking her personal belongings from the office, Dinara heard her colleagues talking about Oksana missing. This information once again convinced Dinara of the correctness of her decision. Several days have passed. Dinara was waiting for a taxi to go to a bar and have fun with her friends. Before leaving the house, the girl looked at the calendar. Thursday. The day of her visit to Clara Iosifovna. What a blessing that I will never see that old witch again, Dinara thought with relief, getting into a taxi. Suddenly, a familiar old voice rang out from the speakers in the car. The brains were smeared on the asphalt. The squirrel ran in, dragged Dinara's tooth with it. Why does she need it now? Dead teeth are useless. Stop the car. I need to get out now. Dinara shouted, but it was already too late. A huge loaded truck, whose brakes failed, rushed to a small passenger car at breakneck speed.